Hey everybody, it's Curse, and today I'm going to bless you with my efforts to make the new Meteor Belt work, utilizing Villatria's set staff and set helmet. I tried quite a few different iterations of the build, from fireballs to just mass meteor spam, and I'll showcase some of them later on in the video. But what you're watching right now is the final iteration and what I arrived at when I combined Lightning Blast with Meteor. It shares a lot of similarities with my Infinite Lightning Blast build, but there is some innovation in it as well. It's a lot of fun and it's quite spectacular. Meteors raining down, blowing everything up, and the usual Lightning Blast fun. But all of these builds are very close to being quite strong. They're just lacking a little bit. So yeah, I'll walk you through the build and share my verdict on it. Let's do it. Irashaimase. Alright, let's go over the skills. Starting with Lightning Blast. So this is our main source of triggering Meteor, and it's a phenomenal single target ability as well. There's nothing too surprising in it. We need to get our crit chance as high as possible, make sure to get lightning ages for cast speed from idols as well, and then make sure to get the convergence node so that Lightning Blast keeps chaining to the exact same enemy over and over. Arcing power together with chain lightning round up in terms of when you divide it by 2 from convergence. So make sure that you have exactly 3 points in arcing power. So that combined with the 2 from chain lightning, that's 5 divided by 2 rounding up is 3 chains. Shatter Shot gives you tremendous damage because it's multiplied by 1.36 twice. So it's 1.36 squared. And then you get these double cast and quadruple cast. Nothing too surprising in the Lightning Blast skill tree. In the Meteor skill tree, we're running Lightning Meteors, so we want to max out Stardust. That's one of the first priorities as soon as you unlock the Lightning conversion with these staff. You want 1 point in Craterborn for 15% cast speed. It's a good value point. Get 4 points in Extinction for the crit chance. 90% crit multi is great. More damage from Infernal Descent. And then 50% area. This node is surprisingly useful. Your meteors become so massive, they cover the entire screen. It's quite entertaining. And then I had a bunch of points left over, so I put them in Aftermath. I'm not sure that there's huge benefit to it. You could probably move these around either to more damage in Crushing Force or more damage with Infernal Descent or even more area. So yeah, this is the Meteor setup with the Lightning Blast triggering your Lightning Meteors. Flame Ward, nothing surprising here. You just get your less hit damage, extra charge, cast when stunned. And then this is a little bit interesting. I tried running Focus as our movement ability instead of teleport, utilizing this node right here. Teleport at start. And it actually has some synergy with this build. Whenever you trigger a few too many meteor procs, you can just teleport away with this focus and get your mana back up. It also seems to wall hack a little bit. You can teleport through some of the walls and doors inside the Temporal Sanctum. It's not always though, so I can't exactly figure out what's triggering that, but I'll have to submit a bug report. And then you can get some mana regen, a good amount of armor because we're running like 100 int. Haste after channeling is nice. And Revelation, this is a really useful one for the extra mana from burst. I'm not a huge fan of Focus, to be honest, but the fact that we can replace teleport with it actually makes it viable. And you'll see how I end up using it in some of the Monolith showcases later on. In terms of trade-offs between Focus and teleport, we lose a bunch of survivability with resistances and armor here. More resistances here. I think cooldown is going to be lower on teleport as well. More reliable haste also. But we can combine our mobility with our mana regen in one skill and not have to run 2. And with this build, you actually do need some mana regen. And finally, we have Arcane Ascendance. This is our turbocharger essentially. If you ever end up teleporting into a nasty pack of monsters or something, you can just click Arcane Ascendance and kill everything around you. It's great versus bosses. We reduce the mana cost of Meteor with this node right here. And the extra spell damage is quite significant as well. More damage per slow. So this is 24% more damage with your Meteors and Lightning Blasts, both. And a little bit of mana sustain. It's not too bad. And extra Lightning Blasts. So I'm running a different version of Arcane Ascendance compared to what I was running when I did the Infinite Lightning Blast build. But you could also run that as well. I'm just showcasing something a little bit different, primarily focused around getting lower mana cost on Meteor. That's kind of what I wanted to get at from this build. I was also trying to make Arcane Ascendant so that you could just expend all of your mana in 5 to 7 seconds against Julra and then recharge after that. So you can have that kind of cycle of boss fighting. And now let's check out the items. This build is a little bit more expensive to itemize, so it's not very easy to start early on in the season with it. There are 5 core items for it. So starting with the staff, Vilatria's Downfall, converts meteor to lightning, tons of mana, good lightning damage, and together with the crown, gives you 1 spell lightning damage per intelligence. So that makes scaling intelligence incredibly powerful with this build. Unfortunately, the crown doesn't offer anything from a defensive standpoint. Armor is garbage. The base bonus is a little bit of elemental damage. So it's a very difficult to itemize build from a defensive standpoint. The third core item is the Harbinger of Stars belt, and this is how we trigger all of our meteors. We don't actually cast meteor too often, although it is good to cast it every now and then when you're being overwhelmed or when you see a big mob of enemies coming at you. But yeah, I got this belt relatively early on with 2 LP in it, so I knew it was meant to be. I knew I had to make a meteor build from it. Unfortunately, I didn't get the best luck with socketing it. It was supposed to have a tier 7 crit strike avoidance, but that's okay. Lightning damage and potions it is. So anyway, this belt gives you 8% chance to cast meteor on crit if above 0 mana, less damage on each meteor you've cast recently, but that's quite difficult to sustain a very high amount on. And then some mana on potions, weird stuff that isn't the most useful, to be honest with you. The meteor fall speed, however, is quite nice. +1 to meteor doesn't hurt either. But what you'll notice is defensively this belt doesn't offer a lot. 1% less damage taken for each meteor you have cast recently. I mean, meteors cost 50 mana, so you can't really sustain too many over a 4-second period. But getting a bunch of meteors to land at the same time makes this belt kind of fun. Next, we need Foot of the Mountain, just to bring our Lightning Blast cost to 0 and to allow us to sustain our mana a little bit better. And even with these boots, you still run out of mana quite easily, as you saw in the Julra video. And then we have Twisted Heart of Eukeros for our survivability item. It is also core, so that's the 5th and final core item for the build. And it's perfect for the build. It gives us cast speed, elemental spells, 13 strength for more armor to protect our ward, and obviously converts health to ward. So the remaining items don't have too many slots available to them. Basically, they all have to have int on them. So you can see my chest piece, it has tier 6 int, and also the spell crit on it is really good. The rings have to have int on them, and they end up the only place where we can get crit strike avoidance, unfortunately. So they need to max out your crit avoid. And I actually have the same ring copied twice because I used one of those runes of creation on it. And then the gloves also int and cast speed. There is no int for amulets, so cast speed on the base, crit multi, spell crit chance is great for amulets, frailty and shred armor. Those are pretty much the best in slot prefixes and affixes you can get. And now what about alternative items? There are a bunch of decent chest piece options. The first one I mentioned is Woven Flesh. The crit strike avoid is really useful for this build. The little bit of extra health, and then the leech rate and increased damage leached as health. Those are both really useful. The overkill damage leached as health is great for meteor because everything is like overkill damage from meteor perspective when you're killing trash. So this one would be a good choice for clearing monoliths. The problem is you need like 2 or 3 LP of it so that you can get intelligence, maybe spell crit, and maybe even an extra affix. But tier 6 or tier 7 intelligence in my mind is a must have in your chest piece. There's also prism wraps. They would help with your survivability. The combination of solid life leech and Twisted Heart of Eukeros is how you stay alive with this build. Currently I'm not running anywhere near enough life leech on this build. 30% less elemental damage taken is also significant. The only problem with this chest piece is that it has an effective level of 100, so you're never going to get a 2 LP with it. Max you can hope for is 1 LP. So you're just gambling to hopefully get, let's say, your tier 6 or tier 7 int into it, but I don't feel like it's an amazing option. And then the last option that I'll mention is Titan Heart. 15% less damage taken is great because we are wielding a 2-handed melee weapon in a staff. 40% extra health is great as well. But again, you have to get at least 2 LP for your Titan Heart to be better than the chest piece that you're going to run. Because this chest piece, you can see crit strike multi, all the int, spell crit, and 2 affixes that can help survivability. It's quite strong. And then I would really recommend Invoker's Static Touch, especially early on in the game. 10% chance to gain ward, and then 13 spell damage is very strong. Only like a tier 7 int with a bunch of strong affixes I think can overpower this one. But yeah, those are the alternative items I would mention. In terms of idols, I'm running my favorite cast speed while you have lightning ages. And then for the affix, you can just do spell lightning damage or lightning damage, whatever you find. I'm running one double lightning damage adorned arcane idol. And then the rest are just maxing out my res. A little bit of health in there. In terms of blessings, I'm running crit multi here, but you really should be switching this to spell life leech. The build needs a lot of spell life leech in order to sustain a high ward amount. It's too squishy otherwise. Make sure to get spell life leech here. Best in slot here is shred lightning resistance. And then for Reign of Dragons, you can either go all res or crit strike avoidance. For Age of Winter, you have a bunch of options. Endurance threshold's alright. Percent armor is not bad. For Spirits of Fire, I really like flat armor, but there are some other decent options. And now let's go over the passive tree. Yeah, get all the health and mana here. We want to get every node with infinite pretty much. Crit Strike Multi and Crit Strike Chance are also great for the build. Cast Speed are great for the build. And then this node is brand new with 0.9 and it is so strong for this build. Spell Critical Strike Chance per Intelligence, 3%. We're running like 100 in, that's 300% crit strike chance. Make sure to get at least 5 points in this one. Armor for this, and then all the cast speeds from the Arcane Momentum. Make sure to get the Life Leech in this node. And I want to mention on Lost Knowledge, this could be really useful for the build, however it doesn't proc if you didn't actively cast that spell. So we're triggering Meteor and this is not proccing when you just trigger it. So it doesn't really help us at all. However, I did try it with just a pure Meteor build that I tried. I'll show you a little bit later in the video. And then crit chance, crit multi, more damage, cooldown, and more int. So yeah, nothing too surprising from the passive side. So here's a sample Monolith run where you can see kind of the skill rotation for the build. It's pretty straightforward. You just zap enemies with Lightning Blast and Meteor procs every now and then. When your mana gets lower or when you want to move around with focus, make sure to just keep it, holding it for another extra second just to get the extra mana. And then zap away again. If you see a large clump of enemies, just don't be afraid to meteor them straight up. It's only 50 mana and you can recover that with one focus. And then if you're in a boss fight, activate Arcane Ascendance and just start zapping and trigger a mass extinction event with your meteors. And remember, if you have 3 stacks of your boots bonus, if you cast focus, that doesn't count as moving. So you can retain those 3 stacks and traverse the map using your mobility skill. And now let me share with you the builds that didn't make the final cut. The first one that I have is Lightning Fireball, triggering our Lightning Meteors. And it's quite visually impressive, but it's just a little bit lagging compared to Lightning Blast. You can see in the Julra video, it's way slower to kill Julra. It also doesn't quite feel as good in Monolith. Overall, I'd say it's worse. The other annoying thing with it is that the Craterborn boost from Meteor is bugged currently, and they recently upped it from 4 seconds to 6 seconds. However, it seems like they forgot to buff the Cycle of Fire mana and ward generation for Fireball up to 6 seconds as well. It just kind of expires after 4 seconds, and even though you have the Craterborn buff for another 2 seconds, you're not getting mana and ward from your Fireball casts. So I'd say don't run this until they fix that. It's a massive difference. 4 seconds versus 6 seconds of that boost. It's a big reason why I ditched this build as well. But the devs are amazing, I'm sure they'll fix it, so we just need to wait it out and come back to it later. 1 minute and 6 seconds for the Julra kill. It's just not quite good enough for us. And here's one more build that just wasn't good enough. Meteor combined with more meteors. Basically you just stack mana and use that Lost Knowledge passive to get something like 10k ward in a few seconds. The problem is when you run out of mana, you're a little bit vulnerable. You need to recharge focus for quite a while. You can see I did a really poor job itemizing here, and Julra just one-shots me for 6k HP. And other than that, it's also very awkward in Monoliths. You have to stop and cast focus for like 10 seconds every now and then. If you itemize a little bit better, it might be more viable to just do pure Meteor, but I don't think it's quite good enough. It's quite hilarious and visually impressive though. Just check out all those meteors. So how does this build compare to other builds? It is this mystery build at the top of the list here. You can see I put 40 seconds for tier 4 Julra because in the video that you saw, even though it was 32 seconds, I got pretty much the best possible rolls for the tankiness of Julra. So I think 40 seconds is more realistic. I think I also got lucky at the end. For monoliths, I think 300 to 350 corruption monoliths are quite doable once you switch to spell damage leech blessing, as well as potentially woven flesh chest armor. Similar to the other lightning blast build, the mobility is not amazing. So overall A- tier for monoliths farming, which is surprisingly the worst out of all of these. In terms of survivability is not great, and then multiplier utility is not bad. Applying a lot of shock, armor shred, and light res shred benefits everybody, so that's why I put B here. And then cost to itemize. This is where the build struggles the most. This is very much a super end game build. You need to farm a lot before you can play this build. That's why I'm not even going to post an early season guide to this build. If you want to farm towards this build, I recommend doing the infinite lightning blast build and then building your way towards it. If you have like insane godly items, I think that's where this build can shine. Stacking up 130 int can make a massive difference for your crit chance as well as for your damage. So the final tier for the build is A-. I think you can probably push it to something like A+, S- tier with godly items. And I mean tier 7 intelligence everywhere, 3 LP chest pieces with intelligence in them, you know, everything. So that's like 500, 1,000 hours of farming, something like that. But all that said, the build is really fun. Stuff's blowing up everywhere. You can't go wrong with it. I still recommend it just to try it out, just to see if it fits your playstyle. Give it a whirl. You might really enjoy it. Check out our Corruption 300 Monolith as we wrap things up. And you'll notice I'm struggling with keeping my HP high. That's just because I haven't got the spell damage leech blessing. And you really need that. I just need the crit strike multi for testing out my static core build. After I test that one out and see how long it takes Julra, I can switch it to something else. But I don't want to waste that 39% crit multi. I really wish this build wasn't as similar to my other Lightning Blast build, but it's just everything I tried, it wasn't as good. I tried Fireball, it didn't perform as well. I tried Mana Strike as well, and I didn't show you a video of that, but it just didn't feel quite right. You don't attack fast enough, so you don't trigger enough meteors with Mana Strike. And I also tried that Meteor Spam build. That was kind of fun, I gotta say. And I was just theory crafting right now. So the bonus on the Harbinger of Stars belt, where you get, let's say, 12 max mana gained on potion use for each meteor you've cast recently, with a lot of cast speed like I was doing, I think I was getting something like 3 meteors per second cast. So in 4 seconds, that's about 12 meteors. So that 12 times 12, that's about 150 mana gained on potion use. So you could theoretically do 2 volleys of meteors. So like expend 900 mana worth of meteors, drink all 7 of your potions, and then go for another round. That could be a pretty fun thing to try. I didn't realize it at the time, but it should work fairly well. Anyway, it's still gonna struggle in Monolith. I hope one of you awesome people builds up on that and finds an even better build. And finally, tomorrow is Diablo 4 Early Access Beta. You better believe it, I'm gonna be blasting. And I'm gonna try streaming my exploratory experience through that beta on Twitch. First here is gonna be Barbarian for me, there is no choice. It has to be Barbarian. So if you happen to not have early access and you want to come check it out, please do. I really appreciate it. I'll see if I can figure out a good way to stream Last Epoch as well. My plays are very exploratory. I'm just switching from one build to another constantly, so I don't know how enjoyable that would be for people. But that could be a good way for me to answer questions about builds, about how and why I'm speccing into this or that. So I'll consider it and try and find time to do it. Maybe incorporate it into some of my new build exploration activities. Please join me tomorrow if you're interested. It's gonna be a lot of fun unless the servers are down. But we're always ready for that possibility, am I right? I took half a day off work, so I'll probably start around 10:30 PST in the morning, which should be 6:30 PM GMT. And I hope to be able to stream, I don't know, we'll see. We'll see how long I can get away with. I hope the game is as good as Last Epoch, and I hope Last Epoch is as successful as Diablo 4 is going to be, because Diablo 4 is gonna sell millions of copies, we all know it. Alright, take it easy and I hope to see you tomorrow. ごちそうさまでした。